So I'm so happy to be here today with Helen and Ren Davis, longtime Brookhaven residents, authors, perhaps. I've written some really cool books that we're going to talk about in a minute. I'm looking here at Brookhaven. So
sure.
I'm a new family,
Okay.
and I'm moving to Brookhaven, and let's say I buy in Ashford Park.
Sure.
And I want to know, what's a little nugget, what's a little morsel that you
Well, how about the cemetery?
Well, you've got several things. You've got the cemetery in front of the Goodwin house, and back up a little bit. This area was set aside for development after a treaty with the Creek Indians in 1821.
Oh, wow.
And that's when the first settlers moved into this area. Now, Decatur had already been established, DeKalb County, but this part of the county was developed in the late 1820s. The first settlers were the Evans family that owned a lot of what is now Brookhaven, Capital City Club, all the way up to Windsor Parkway. Then you had the Goodwin family, and their house still stands right there near Cherokee Plaza, back in the trees.
Kind of right next to Subway.
Right next to Subway.
Yes,
Sure.
That's
that's right.
not the original location of the house. The house was
the
where the
original
Brookhaven MARTA station was, but they were wise enough to move the house rather than simply demolish it. It's the oldest standing house in DeKalb County. It was built about 1831, and the third family was the House family, Samuel House. He came as a farmer about that same time, late 1830s, became quite prosperous, and he built a plantation home, the Samuel House Plantation, which is now the Peachtree Golf Course.
I was going to ask you about the Peachtree Golf Course.
That's the House Plantation. The significance in many ways of the House Plantation was that we know for a fact that General Sherman spent a night in that house. And he had two wings of his army converging at Johnson's Ferry and Old Cross Keys, which is right up there at Ashford, Dunwoody, and Johnson Ferry Road. And then he stayed at that house while the two wings were moving south towards Atlanta and over towards Decatur. The night of July 18th, 19th, 1864, he stayed at that house.
So there's a historical marker right there.
There
right
is.
there on
There
Peachtree,
is. And interestingly, Windsor Parkway was called House Road
Okay.
because it went down the length of his plantation
all the way to the Roswell Road.
to Roswell Road, and you know Roswell Road was the connector
Sure.
that went from
Atlanta up to the village of Roswell.
Yeah.
And
Through
of course, Ashford Dunwoody Road was the Dunwoody Road, and John Dunwoody was one of the first founders of the city of Roswell.
That's
So
so cool.
There's a lot of interconnections.
and to think that Buckhead was named that because there was a tavern right there where you either went straight to go towards
Roswell. North.
No, left. You
Oh,
go
you go-
left to go to Roswell, and there was a tavern that had a buck's head outside of it. So they said turn at the Buck's Head to go to Roswell.
Henry Irby's Tavern.
Henry Irby's Tavern. All these names because there's Irby Street, which is where Henri's is located now.
That's where close to where the tavern was.
Wow. So you being a third generation native Atlantan, did you know a lot of this history already?
I knew a bunch
Little
of it,
bits,
but I
but
mean,
we
you know,
learned more and
I had
more.
the typical residents take for granted kind of knowledge of things, having grown up in the area.
Sure.
But it was when we dove in that you begin to peel back the layers of the onion, and you found out all these little interesting nuggets, as you describe, and little side stories.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Evans family were the first settlers that came in. When we were doing the work for the historical timeline for the centennial of Silver Lake, which we had last September, because the lake's 100 years old, which surprises a lot of people. I went to the Nancy Creek Primitive Baptist Church Cemetery, which is right over in Ashford Park.
That's on 8th Street in Caldwell.
It is.
That's
and if
correct.
you walk through the cemetery, you will see the Evans family, you'll see the Goodwin family, you'll see
Is the House family?
There are some House family members there.
Okay.
Samuel House is not there, I don't believe.
Okay.
But they're all those first settlers, the pioneers. Many of them are in that cemetery, or they're in the one over in Chambly, near behind Antique Row.
What about the cemetery in front of the the Goodwin house.
Okay, that was the family cemetery. Obviously, it was in the back part of the property when the house was built because it was over where the MARTA station is. It wasn't in the front yard of the house.
So they moved it?
They moved the house, not the cemetery.
Oh, okay.
They moved the
Sure.
house
To make